The FIA just dropped the bomb. Official evidence from Norris McLaren has triggered a full-scale investigation in Abu Dhabi.
What they found could tilt the entire championship and hand Max Verstappen the lifeline he's been waiting for. Why are torque values in McLaren's telemetry raising red flags, and could this disqualify Norris from the final round? Subscribe now, because this is no longer just about lap times, this is about the rulebook, the stewards, and the future of the title. Abu Dhabi was meant to be a final tune-up, a stage for strategy, precision, and preparation. But what unfolded on Friday sent ripples through the entire paddock. Shortly after the second practice session, the FIA confirmed it had reviewed technical data from Lando Norris McLaren and discovered what it called non-conforming torque patterns during acceleration zones. Specifically, the data captured on exit from turn 14 didn't align with expected power unit behavior. It was enough to open an internal investigation, and just like that, the story changed. This wasn't just about who was fastest anymore, it was about who was legal. For Max Verstappen and Red Bull, it was the kind of news that reshapes a weekend. Just hours earlier, Verstappen had finished second in both FP1 and FP2. His lap times were solid, but the mood inside the garage was tense. During FP1, he abandoned a lap that was on pace for the session lead due to a snap of oversteer in turn 2. It didn't stop there. On the radio, Verstappen sent a coded warning to his engineer, "I think something might be broken." When asked to clarify, he gave a short, deliberate answer, "It's everywhere now." That triggered a full inspection behind the scenes. Red Bull's engineers knew exactly what that meant. Verstappen wasn't overdriving, and he wasn't being dramatic. When he says something feels off, he's usually pinpointing what the data will later confirm. The team analyzed suspension loads, rake sensitivity, and hybrid deployment patterns. They made setup changes before FP2, adjusting damper curves and rebalancing brake migration. Verstappen went out again and once more posted the second fastest time, this time 0.3 behind Norris. But the car still felt edgy. And now, suddenly, the team found itself in a position where the lap times might not be the full story. Lando Norris had looked untouchable throughout the day.
He topped FP1 by the tiniest margin and then extended the gap in FP2. But under the surface, the numbers didn't all add up. FIA analysts reviewing energy deployment noticed a spike in torque delivery out of the final sector, a pattern that didn't match standard hybrid mapping. It wasn't enough for a penalty. But it was enough for concern. In a title-deciding weekend, any irregularity, even accidental, is a live wire. Once the data was logged, the stewards were informed, and a technical inquiry began in the background. Importantly, Red Bull has not launched a formal protest. That would be a declaration of war. Instead, they're allowing the FIA's process to unfold naturally, knowing full well that if the data shows a deviation, the ruling body will act. And Verstappen, whose championship hopes hang by a thread, now finds himself with a potential wildcard. The Dutchman needs to win the race. Norris needs to finish fourth or lower. That was always a long shot. But if McLaren is found in breach of technical regulations, the table resets and Verstappen knows how to finish what others cannot. Meanwhile, in the garage, the focus remains razor-sharp. Verstappen isn't celebrating anything. He's still working through car behavior that remains unpredictable over long runs. His medium tire stints in FP2 showed sharp degradation, and corner exit traction continues to fade late in each lap. That won't be solved by regulation. It needs engineering. But Verstappen's ability to drive through mechanical instability is unmatched. He's done it all year. And now, if the stewards level the playing field even slightly, Red Bull could strike from second with perfect timing. This isn't how anyone expected Friday to end. The sport's biggest race of the year is now wrapped in technical uncertainty, legal tension, and psychological warfare. Norris still holds the edge in speed, but Verstappen may now hold the advantage in pressure. The stewards are reviewing evidence. Red Bull is reviewing simulations. And fans around the world are refreshing their feeds waiting for answers. The track has gone quiet for now, but the story is just beginning to roar. From the moment FP1 began, Max Verstappen looked like a driver on a mission. With Abu Dhabi marking the final battlefield of a season defined by comebacks, Verstappen wasted no time laying down a benchmark.
His early laps were clean, fast, and composed. On the soft compound, he pushed the RB21 close to the edge, lighting up the first 2 sectors purple.
But then came turn 2.
A sudden rear snap forced him to lift off. The lap was aborted, and yet his best time still came in at 1 minute, 24 seconds, and 493 thousandths, just 8 thousandths behind Norris.
That number masked a deeper truth.
Verstappen could have topped the session if not for that error. But what concerned Red Bull more was what followed.
Verstappen's radio message came through with a rare sense of urgency. I think something might be broken.
His tone wasn't dramatic. It was precise. That phrase, delivered by a driver who rarely overreacts, immediately triggered a full internal review.
It's everywhere now,
he added, a clear signal that the issue wasn't isolated to one corner or component. Despite the message, Verstappen continued his run. Red Bull kept him on track to gather as much telemetry as possible. His laps were consistent, but visibly lacking the full balance he prefers. On hard tires, long-run pace showed early signs of rear instability, particularly on corner exits in Sector 3.
Compared to Norris, Verstappen's average pace drifted faster into the high 29s. Meanwhile, the McLaren looked surgically precise, no wasted movement, no overcorrection, and clean traction through every exit. It was clear Norris had the easier car to drive. FP2 was when the real comparison unfolded. Conditions cooled to near qualifying levels, and both teams ran similar programs. Verstappen went out early on soft tires and posted a 1 minute, 23.446. That was a strong response, but it wasn't enough. Norris struck back immediately with a lap of 1 minute, 23.083. 3/10 clear.
What made it worse for Red Bull was that Norris set that time without pushing visibly to the edge. His lines were smooth, his throttle application calm. He looked like a driver with margin left.
When long-run simulations began, the trend became even more obvious. Verstappen's stint on medium tires started well, with his first lap hovering around 1 minute 29. But by lap 3, the degradation kicked in.
His time slipped by 3 to 5 tenths lap by lap. Norris, on the same compound and similar fuel load, held stable in the 29.2 range for 5 laps straight.
Red Bull's main concern wasn't just pace, it was the rate of fall-off. Verstappen was working harder for less return. Tire performance wasn't the only concern. Verstappen's rear-end grip under load appeared inconsistent.
Under acceleration out of low-speed corners like turn 7 and turn 17, the RB21 showed signs of rotation lag and mid-exit traction loss.
The team made diff tweaks mid-session, but nothing erased the instability. Verstappen adapted lap by lap, but the handling corrections were costing him critical tenths.
Norris, meanwhile, stayed nearly flat in his steering correction through the same corners, another sign that McLaren had nailed their setup window early.
Red Bull knows that Verstappen can drive around problems. He's done it all year.
But on a track where every corner exit matters, and every lap must be nailed under pressure, the car needs to give him a platform to attack. So far, the RB21 hasn't done that.
Norris leads the timesheets. Verstappen is close, but not close enough. And with the FIA now examining Norris data, the dynamic has shifted. Verstappen doesn't just need to find lap time. He might need to be ready to capitalize if the stewards open the door.
The RB21 is a masterpiece of efficiency, but only when every element is dialed in to the millimeter. And that's the core challenge Red Bull faced on Friday. While Verstappen was able to produce competitive lap times, his radio traffic and on-track behavior exposed a deeper problem. The car was delivering lap time, but not confidence. The balance was too narrow. A slight temperature drop, a small surface change, or even a shift in wind direction was enough to send the car into instability.
In a qualifying simulation, that's manageable. Over a race stint? That's a structural weakness. Abu Dhabi's layout punishes any imbalance between aerodynamic load and mechanical grip.
Sector 2, with its long straights and heavy braking zones, gives the RB21 an advantage. Red Bull's straight-line speed remains one of its strongest weapons, especially with low-drag rear wing configurations. But that advantage vanishes in Sector 3. Through the hotel complex, the car must maintain lateral grip during low-speed changes of direction. That's where Verstappen struggled the most. The rear stepped out in turn 17 more than once. The onboard showed multiple micro-corrections, exactly the kind of thing that over time degrades tire performance. McLaren, on the other hand, seems to have arrived in Abu Dhabi with a car that works across all conditions.
The MCL39B is inherently more stable on throttle. That's not a fluke. It's the result of months of incremental upgrades, revised suspension geometries, updated rear floor designs, and energy deployment maps that prioritize predictability over peak power. The result is a car that might not be the fastest at the end of a straight, but one that extracts everything through corners. And on a technical track like Yas Marina, corner exit matters more than terminal velocity. One of the more overlooked challenges for Red Bull lies in tire thermal management. On Friday, Verstappen's medium tire long runs began with encouraging pace, but within 3 laps, the car's balance shifted. The rear tires overheated slightly, leading to rotational delay and loss of traction out of slow corners. The degradation curve was steep. Even though Verstappen adjusted his inputs, lap times began to drift upwards. Red Bull's engineers believe the RB21's current setup may be trapping excess heat into the carcass due to high rear camber loads and aggressive power delivery. That problem is compounded by rear suspension dynamics. Red Bull's current rear geometry favors a squat-heavy traction zone, which helps with acceleration but compresses the floor aggressively. That floor compression can disrupt airflow under certain loads, reducing downforce and generating inconsistent grip. Verstappen's FP2 laps showed multiple exits where the rear broke free momentarily, not in spectacular fashion, but just enough to ruin corner exit. Norris, in contrast, could apply throttle more linearly. The difference?
A car that's rotating from its center, not being dragged around by the rear axle.
Adding to that is the impact of Abu Dhabi's transition from daylight to twilight. In FP1, higher track temperatures masked some of Red Bull's instability.
But as conditions cooled in FP2 closer to qualifying and race reality, the RB21's behavior changed significantly. The grip level dropped, understeer increased in the mid-corner phase, and Verstappen had to ask for several balance changes during the session. That setup shift wasn't part of the plan, it was damage control. McLaren's baseline, on the other hand, remained virtually unchanged between both sessions. That alone suggests their car is operating in a more flexible window.